To everybody out here tonight, we just thank the Lord for being able to be here tonight. Let's turn hymnals, page 222, Higher Grounds. Page 222. I'm pressing on the upward way, new heights I'm gaining every day, still praying as I onward bound. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand. My faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. My heart has no desire to stay where doubts arise and fears dismay, but some must dwell where thee are found. My prayer, my aim is higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand. My faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to live above the world, the saints and stars, and meet our world. For faith has taught a joyful sound, the song of saints on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand. My faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to scale the utmost height and catch a gleam of glory bright. But still I pray, till heaven I've found. Lord, lead me on to higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand. My faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Amen. This time I turn it over to Pastor, or to Brother Brad. Brother Brad. Pastor Brad. Thank you for the reading of it.
Sorry, I just done all the day. To this.
I got down on my knees fixing something for Paul and under singing.
Good to see everybody this evening. We're still in Revelation. We're still in 13. The last time took quite a bit of time to get through 2 verses. The whole time, as a matter of fact. And so we're going to be going to Revelation chapter 13. We'll start verse 3 tonight. Let's hope we can get more than 2 verses in tonight. Okay, we'll start with verse 3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded. This is a head wound and a mortal wound, not a superficial injury. We're talking about the beast right here, which is the Antichrist. And his deadly wound was healed. This recovery of this beast increases his fame and his authority. All the world, they marveled and followed after this beast. And twice later, in this same chapter, in verse 12 and verse 14, we're going to see this recovery is mentioned in connection to the world's worship and devotion to this beast. The most natural way to understand God's words in Revelation 13 make us believe that he speaks of a man who will be mortally wounded, but will be healed. This man will lead a revived Roman Empire, and his personality will run and dominate it. When it says wounded and healed, this is truly an Antichrist. So he even imitates Jesus in his death and in his resurrection. The world will believe this, and it will add tremendously to his fame and his power. But we know that this is probably going to be an illusion. It's not going to be true, because the only one who can raise somebody from the dead is God. So it's probably going to be some type of illusion, but it's going to be one that people are going to believe, this illusion. And then in verse 4 it says, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? As people worship this beast and bow down before his government, it may be that they do not know that they're bowing down to Satan at the same time. They may not know that, but they clearly worship both here, the beast and Satan, the dragon. But their worship of the dragon, they may not know that they're actually worshiping Satan, but they will be at the same time. Satan worship becomes more and more popular each year in this country and around the world. But it's still just a tiny fraction of people who openly worship Satan. There's not very many people that openly worship Satan. But that's part of the reason for that is because people, if they look to Satan as being ugly and horrible, and he's not. He's beautiful and shows light. It says, in Corinthians, it says, that's wrong. For Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. And there's no great thing if his ministers also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness, and they deceive people into thinking that they're better than what they actually are. As the old saying goes, they're a wolf in sheep's clothing is what it is. And also, too, it says, who is like the beast? Who's able to make war with him? In that same verse, the world will be amazed at how much power this beast has. And they'll believe he's so mighty that he can't be conquered. But the only reason at this time that he can't be conquered, and he blasphemes Jesus and persecutes God's people, they'll appear for a short time to be losing the battle. But we know that the only reason that he can do anything is because God allows him to do it. That's the only reason he's able to do anything. People, they'll worship the beast and they'll worship the dragon behind the beast. Simply because some people, just because he's mighty, not because of anything good that he does, just because he's mighty. It might be just because of his ability of brute force to be able to force them into that, to worshiping him. Then in verses 5 and 6, and there was given to him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And then in verse 6, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. It talks about him speaking great things. That means he's going to be a great orator. He's going to deceive people with that great if you remember how, Hitler stood up there and he deceived people with them great speeches that he made, and he got a whole nation to follow after him because of all the things that he did. This Antichrist will be able to do the same thing. He'll be a great orator. He'll be able to give speeches and fire people up to do different things. So that's what it means when it says he'll speaking great things. But he's also a blasphemer. And he was given authority for 42 months, it says. These 42 months, as we've already discussed earlier, is 3.5 years, approximately 3.5 years. That's his full reign of power. And he's still, but he is still, we need to remember, he's still under God's authority. If God wanted to wipe him out right there and then, he could do it easily. But that's not his plan. And it's not our place to question God. And it says, why, and people say, why does the beast blaspheme those who dwell in heaven? This means he speaks against those who were taken in the rapture. We're already going to be in heaven whenever this takes place. And all heaven dwellers which are out of his reach. Everybody it's in. And if you remember from our studies earlier, Satan and his angels were kicked out of heaven and they could never have access back to heaven again. So he's blaspheming all them, but he has no way to get to any of them at this time. And then in verse 7, it says, and it was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. It says this particular place here, when it says that he is given power over all kindreds and tongues and nations, that's talking about one world government. That's what it's talking about. So we're going to there's going to be one world government. And this persecution during this tribulation, the government of this beast will persecute and will kill all those who do not bow down and worship him. They will kill them. And it says he will overcome them. But overcoming them means he can destroy their physical lives. By all appearances, defeat the cause of God's people on this earth. But we know, who are these saints? Who are overcome by the beast? Those who believe in pre-tribulation rapture like us believe that these saints are God's people who come to Christ after the church has been raptured. And Jesus said to the church that the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it in Matthew 16:8. But one of the things, that we need to remember, this beast and this satanic persecution, he can take their physical lives, but he can't take their spiritual lives. He can't do that. So when it talks about him overcoming the saints, he's talking about their physical lives, not their spiritual lives, the saints. And then in verse 8, it says, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Now this particular verse right here is talking about a one world religion. It says, all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written. So now we have a one world government. Now we got a one world religion. And this final dictator, this world dictator, will demand and receive worship from the whole earth. But those that worship him are going to pay a price. They're going to pay a dear price. Because their names, it says, is not written in the Lamb's book of life. And it will probably be after the pattern of the worship demanded by the Roman emperors. In the days of the early church, the Roman emperors demanded that people actually burn a pinch of incense before a statue of Caesar and say, Caesar is Lord, all hail Caesar. Christians refused to do this, and they were persecuted at that time for refusing to do it because they saw that as worshiping Caesar. And they wasn't about to worship Caesar when they knew that there was one true God to worship. And it's easy to see how people can fall down and worship these people to a certain extent. Because, when we stop and think about Lenin and Stalin and Hitler and Mao, all these dictators through the years have persecuted and killed vast amounts of people. But, from you studying history, you can see that most of those dictators, every place that you went, there was a picture of them. They had pictures even in subways. They had pictures on train stations. They had pictures everywhere. You couldn't walk down the street without seeing a picture of these dictators. And they expected people to look to them and worship them at that time. And it said, the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. This deeply meaningful title for Jesus reminds us that God's plan of redemption was set in place before he ever even created anything. Before even the created beings who would be redeemed. God wasn't surprised by the fall of Adam or any other evidence of the fallen nature of man. God isn't making it up as he goes along. It's all going according to his plan. We know that God the Son had a relationship of love and fellowship with God the Father before the foundation of the world. And you can find that in John 17:24. In John 17:24, it says, Father, I will that they also, whom thou hast given me, be with me where I am, that they may behold my glory, which thou hast given me, for thou lovest me before the foundation of the world. And then the work of Jesus was ordained before the foundation of the world. And you'll find that in 1 Peter 1:20. And it says, who verily was ordained before the foundation of the world, but was manifest in these last times for you. And then God knew his redeemed before the foundation of the world, according as he hath chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love. And that's Ephesians 1:4. And then also it says, names are written in the book of life before the foundation of the world. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they beheld the beast that was and is not and yet is. That's Revelation 17:8. And then the kingdom of heaven was prepared for the redeemed before the foundation of the world. And you'll find that in Matthew 25:34. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. So it shows that God knew everything before the foundation of the world. Everything was preordained even before then. And then in Revelations 9 and 10, 13, 9 and 10, it says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. He who has an ear, let him hear. This introduces a solemn word of warning meant to capture the attention of all who hear. And he says, he who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. This makes you remember God will measure unto you what you have measured to others. What you sow, so shall you reap. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Though they are viciously attacked by the Antichrist and his followers, the saints of God must keep steadfast faith in the ultimate justice of God. He will reward their persecutors with persecution of his own. And then we go to Revelation 13:11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Now we're going to be introduced to another beast. This creature represents someone like the beast rising from the sea, because the same word beast is used to describe both of them at the same time, but this beast is different. They are different in origin because one comes out of the sea and the other one comes out of the earth. That's what it tells us. They're different in appearance because the second has a mild lamb-like appearance. And he had 2 horns like a lamb. The 2 horns may express the fact that this beast has authority in 2 realms, such as religious and political authority both. And it says he spoke like a dragon. Despite his lamb-like appearance, the message of the second beast is the same as the message of the first beast. The second beast is called the false prophet. Here we have the false prophet being revealed to us now. And that's someone distinct from this first beast, the Antichrist. And it's different from the dragon, which is Satan. And you know, with the dragon, the beast rising from the sea and the beast rising from the land, now we have an unholy trinity. We've got 3 entities here. The dragon is the anti-father. The beast rising from the sea is the anti-Christ. And the beast rising from the land is the anti-Holy Spirit. And then verse 12, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Once again, it's mentioned about his deadly wound being healed. In verse 12. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. You know, he exercises all the authority of this first beast. He's a satanic prophet, is what he is, who leads the world to worship the beast and the dragon. It seems almost fantastic to some that the world will be led into worship of a man and a devil. But by nature, men have an undeniable religious impulse to worship something. If nothing else, they want to worship themselves and their own body. If nothing else. What men want most is not the elimination of religion, but their own religion. I can understand that. They say they want the kingdom, but they don't want God in their kingdom. Then verse 13 and 14. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from the heaven on the earth in the sight of men. So he's going to perform great miracles and wonders. And 14, and he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound, once again mentioned, the wound by the sword, and did live. Once again it mentioned that wound that the beast had and recovered from. You know, and he's going to perform great signs. He's going to make fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. He's going to do all kinds of miraculous things that the whole world's going to look at him and wonder about the things that he's doing. You know, you can imagine this false prophet saying, let the true God answer with fire, and then performing his deceptive wonder. That's probably the way he'll deceive people. You know, there is a supernatural power which is against God and against truth, as well as one from God and truth. You know, a miracle simply as a work of wonder is not necessarily of God. There's always been a devilish supernaturalism in the world running alongside divine grace and salvation. You know, in the days of Exodus, Aaron performed these miracles. Remember, he performed those miracles, and up to a point, he was matched miracle for miracle by the magicians of Egypt, up to a point. In Deuteronomy, God assumes there will be supernatural works on behalf of false prophets and idols, and he warns people to judge a worker of miracles by their message, not by their works. Jesus said that some who worked miracles, even in his name, were false followers and would perish in hell. That's in Matthew 7:22 and 23. Jesus said that in the end times, false prophets would emerge and show great signs and wonders to deceive many. That's in Matthew 24:24. Paul even said that the Antichrist will come with all power of signs and lying wonders. That was in 2 Thessalonians 2:9. I want to read this to you. Knowing all this, the emphasis on signs and wonders among some Christians is frightening. Some Christians say or think you can really know where God is and where his power is by signs and wonders. Thinking this way is to leave yourself wide open to deception. Years ago, there was a large multi-denominational conference. I looked that up too. Big conference of people who thought this way, and their big sign that they had up there and their big slogan on a huge banner over the conference platform read, "Unity under signs and wonders." And they were actually deceiving many people with that conference that they had. That's a unity that Satan, the Antichrist, and the false prophet could all join into. Signs and wonders will be present among Christians, but the real work of God, the real marks of God's work are love and truth. That's the real work of his truth and his work. And then in verse 15, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. No, this verse 15, this beast rising from the earth will use a deceptive animated image of some sort. It's, as a focus point of the worship of the beast. It might seem strange to have the whole world give this kind of worship to the image of a man. But the personality cults of totalitarian governments have always shown that man is ready to worship these type of things. And somehow this image of this beast is animated in some way, in that it had breath and it could speak mechanically or supernaturally. But it was shown that image did that or will do that. Isn't it nice to know that we're not going to be here and we're not going to put up with all these deceptions? We're going to be raptured out of here. But it's our job to warn the people that may be left here behind, that they know where they can find out how to recover from this great tribulation. This image of the Antichrist will be a different kind of idol, because the image of the beast should both speak and causes many who would not worship the image, they're going to be killed. If they don't worship it, they're going to be killed. This same idolatrous image is what Jesus, Daniel, and Paul spoke of when they talked about the abomination of desolation. That's exactly what it is. They're going to set up this image in the temple, is where you're going to set this image up and expect everyone to worship it. It'll be set up in a holy place of a rebuilt temple, is where it's going to be. And it's an abomination in the sense of being supreme idolatry. And it's desolation in the sense that it will bring the judgment described by the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls, all these judgments. And then verse 16 and 17. And he caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. He said this is the mark of the beast that everybody's talked about and tried to speculate about. And of course, without this mark, you won't be able to participate in the economy. No one may buy or sell except one who has the mark of it or of his name. A mark on the right hand or on their forehead. Satan is not a creative being. All he can do is imitate God. We're not surprised to find that this too is a satanic parody of something God will do. It imitates the God's mark upon his people, on their mark on their forehead. And it talks about the number of his name. This was a common concept in ancient world. In Greek and Hebrew as well, letters were assigned a number. a numerical number, such as A equaling 1 and B equals 2 and so forth. You know, the number of this beast, it tells us in verse 18, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666, or 666, 666. This number 666, does this tell us who the beast is? By figuring out the numerical value of a name, seeing if it adds up to 666. Using this method, there's been people and candidates for Antichrist have been suggested. I'm going to give you a list of all the people that's been suggested by various people that have put numbers and twisted all kinds of things around to put people's name in as being the Antichrist. One of them was Caesar. One of them's the Pope. One of them's John Knox. He's the Scotsman that started the Presbyterian Church, John Knox is. Martin Luther, Napoleon, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, John Kennedy. There's people that say he's still alive and on an island someplace because he had a head wound and he's going to come back. We're just waiting for his time. I'll tell you, there's some strange people out there. Mikhail Gorbachev, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton. I knew that too. Too bad Hillary is not listed in there, but she's not a man. Maybe even Monica Lewinsky should be in there too. Barack Hussein Obama, he's a good bet. Donald Trump, Jimmy Hoffa, Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, Elvis, and so forth. But all these schemes for unlocking the numbers of the beast are as confusing as they are endless. That's what they are. The list is not finished yet. People are still calculating. They must have too much time on their hands if they can calculate all this stuff. They've got too much time on their hands. It is sad, but I think there are more Christians out there that's looking for the Antichrist instead of looking for Jesus Christ. And that's who we need to be looking for. That's who I'm looking for. 7 is the number of completion and totality. And 6 doesn't quite make it. Those numbers of 6 don't quite make it. You know, modern interpretations of the idea of the Antichrist are full of the idea that some demon child, marked by obvious evil from his birth, such as in the Omen movies. But the Antichrist may be someone whose evil was only seen after he rises to power. And I think that when we think about the white horse that we studied in Revelation 6:2, that'll show us that he'll come in the form of light. He'll be a good guy. Everybody will think he's really wonderful to start out with. And then his evil will be revealed, in time. Instead of obsessing with fear and interest about the imitation, that's the Antichrist, how much more appropriate would it be for Christians to be interested in the genuine Jesus Christ? That's all I have to. We got through that chapter tonight. It went a little bit over, but I'm glad we got through that. We still got a lot to cover here in Revelation, a lot to study, a lot to contemplate. I mean, I'd like to spend more time maybe going through the Bible, but if anybody wants any of the notes from this, that if they want to know where all these scriptures are, where I've talked about, if you didn't take notes or you want me to give you notes, I can give you notes and show you where you can go and look some of these up, some of these things that I read. But let's go ahead and close in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time you've given us to study your word. Thank you for your word. Thank you for the book of Revelation. Dear Lord, we know that we're going to be raptured out of here through most of it, and we're not going to be here, but it's still our job. You gave us this word. You want us to study it, and you want us to warn people about what's coming. The tribulation is going to be so terrible, nobody wants to go through it if they just knew how terrible it was going to be. Dear Lord, we ask you to please continue to watch over our church. Help us to prosper and grow. Continue, dear Lord, to forgive us of our sins. We all have sinned so much. We sin every day. Dear Lord, we know that you're faithful and true to forgive us. We ask you all these favors in Jesus' precious and holy name. Amen.
Yeah, I'd like to have a copy of that.
$5.
Now, didn't he say he was?
Yeah, he
I did. I forgot to say for $5.
Don't forget to turn the camera off. I'll look at it again, make sure it's posted. I always watched a couple of them.
Yeah,